A skeptic steps into a haunted town, searching for the truth behind a vengeful ghost and the disappearance of his own sister. Elias Thorne, a journalist specializing in debunking paranormal claims, drove into Willow Creek. The town, shrouded by ancient, gnarled trees, felt less like a place and more like a forgotten whisper. Its name, Willow Creek, evoked a pastoral serenity that belied the oppressive weight in the air. A palpable sense of unease hung heavy. Elias, driven by the unexplained disappearance of his own younger sister, sought logic, reason, and tangible proof. He needed a bulwark against the chaos that had consumed his past. He believed in the concrete, the verifiable, and dismissed anything hinting at the supernatural as mere superstition. His current assignment involved a local legend. Whispers and hushed tones across the internet's darker corners spoke of a vengeful spirit haunting an old mill. Elara, they called her. A young woman brutally murdered decades ago, her spectral presence forever bound to the place of her demise. Elias scoffed. Yet, a morbid curiosity drew him deeper into the town's melancholic embrace. He rented a small, dusty cabin on the outskirts. Its windows overlooked the very creek that gave the town its name. The waters were dark and sluggish. The isolation of the cabin, initially a comfort, soon began to feel like a trap. His initial inquiries were met with a wall of silence. A collective fear emanated from the very stones of Willow Creek. The few townsfolk who dared to speak offered only fragmented whispers. Their eyes darted nervously, as if Elara herself might be listening. "The mill, she's there," an old woman croaked. Her voice was raspy with age and terror. "She remembers. She always remembers." Elias meticulously recorded their tales, dismissing them as folklore. Yet, even he, the staunch skeptic, couldn't ignore the subtle shifts in the cabin's temperature. There were sudden, inexplicable cold spots. Faint, almost imperceptible whispers seemed to drift on the wind. He found himself constantly turning his head, searching for the source of sounds that weren't there. His nerves frayed. As days bled into weeks, the phenomena intensified. They became more personal, more invasive. Elias, a man of science and reason, found his carefully constructed world unraveling. Sleep became a battleground. His nights were plagued by vivid, visceral nightmares. He saw Elara, not as a translucent apparition, but as a living, breathing woman. Her eyes were wide with terror. Her screams echoed in the cavernous depths of the old mill. He saw the faces of her tormentors, distorted by shadow and malice. Their laughter was a guttural symphony of cruelty. He would wake in a cold sweat. The images were seared into his mind. The scent of damp earth and decay clung to his sheets. A smell that seemed to permeate the very air of Willow Creek. During the day, the hallucinations began. They were insidious and relentless. Fleeting glimpses of a pale figure in his peripheral vision. The rustle of a dress just out of sight. The distinct sound of a mournful sigh beside him when he was utterly alone. He started questioning his own sanity. A chilling realization gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Was he succumbing to the very superstitions he sought to debunk? Or was something far more insidious at play? Something that preyed on the mind itself? The memory of his sister, a wound that had never truly healed, began to resurface with agonizing clarity. He saw her face in the shadows. He heard her laughter in the whispers. He felt her touch in the sudden, icy drafts. Elara, it seemed, was not merely haunting the mill. She was haunting him. She exploited his deepest vulnerabilities, blurring the lines between his past and her tragic present. She wove a tapestry of terror from his own unresolved grief. The paranormal activity escalated with terrifying precision. Each incident was a deliberate, calculated assault on his sanity. Objects in his cabin would shift, subtly at first, then with increasing aggression. A book would slide off a shelf with a soft thud. A teacup would shatter on the floor as if thrown by an unseen hand. A chair would scrape across the room as if dragged by an invisible presence. The whispers grew louder. They coalesced into fragmented sentences. A chilling chorus of despair and rage seemed to emanate from the very walls. He heard his name, Elara's name, and then, most disturbingly, his sister's name. It was woven into the spectral tapestry of sound. A cruel reminder of his personal loss. One night, as he sat hunched over his laptop, trying to rationalize the inexplicable, a cold, skeletal hand seemed to brush against his neck. It sent a jolt of pure terror through him. He spun around. His heart hammered against his ribs. But there was nothing. Only the oppressive silence of the cabin. It was now a cage of his own making. A place where his sanity was slowly being eroded. The old mill stood like a skeletal sentinel against the bruised sky. Its decaying timbers groaned under the weight of decades of neglect and unspoken horrors. Tonight, however, it pulsed with a malevolent energy. A palpable hum vibrated through the very ground. A low thrum seemed to echo the beating of a vengeful heart. Elias, his face gaunt and etched with a newfound terror, stood before it. A worn leather-bound journal was clutched in his trembling hand. Inside were the names, the dates, the chilling details of Elara's brutal murder, and the complicity of the town's most esteemed families. He had sent copies to every major news outlet. A desperate act to ensure the truth would finally see the light of day. A final attempt to expose the darkness that had consumed Willow Creek. But tonight, it wasn't about public exposure. It was about witnessing the culmination of a century of injustice. A reckoning long overdue. He wasn't alone. Drawn by an unseen force, or perhaps by a morbid curiosity they couldn't suppress, the descendants of Elara's murderers had gathered. There was Thomas Blackwood, the mayor. His face was a mask of feigned concern. His family's wealth was built on the very land where Elara had been butchered. Eleanor Vance, the town's esteemed historian. Her ancestors had meticulously erased Elara from the town's records. Her scholarly demeanor was now replaced by a terrified tremor. And a handful of others. Their faces were pale and drawn. Their eyes darted nervously towards the mill's gaping maw. A silent acknowledgement of the terror that awaited them. They had come, not to confess, but to understand. To perhaps even appease the restless spirit they had so long denied. Their fear was a tangible thing in the cold night air. As Elias stepped into the mill, the air grew heavy. It was thick with the scent of damp earth, decay, and something else. Something metallic and cloying, like old blood. A scent that made his stomach churn. The whispers intensified. No longer fragmented, but coalescing into a guttural, enraged shriek. A sound that seemed to rip at the very fabric of reality. A cold wind, carrying the stench of the grave, swept through the mill. It extinguished the lanterns they carried, plunging them into absolute darkness. Panic erupted. Shouts, desperate and terrified, echoed off the stone walls. They were followed by the sickening sounds of bodies colliding in the darkness. Elias fumbled for his flashlight. its beam cut through the oppressive blackness. It revealed a scene of unfolding horror that would forever be seared into his memory. Elara was there. Not a translucent apparition, but a tangible, horrifying presence. Her form, shimmering and distorted, was woven from shadows and moonlight. Her eyes burned with an infernal, vengeful light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. Her once beautiful face was a mask of agony. Her skin was flayed. Her limbs were twisted at unnatural angles, mirroring the brutality of her death. She moved with a jerky, unnatural grace. Her long, spectral fingers reached out, not to touch, but to inflict. Each movement was a silent promise of unimaginable pain. Thomas Blackwood was the first. A guttural scream tore from his throat as Elara's shadowy form enveloped him. His body contorted. His bones audibly snapped as if crushed by an invisible vice. Blood, thick and dark, erupted from his mouth. His eyes bulged in a silent plea for mercy that would never come. His screams abruptly ceased. They were replaced by a wet, gurgling sound as his chest caved in. It left a grotesque, pulpy mess. The air filled with the coppery tang of fresh blood. It mingled with the scent of decay. A macabre perfume of death. Eleanor Vance, her face contorted in a silent scream, stumbled backward. She tripped over a loose stone. Elara's gaze, filled with an ancient, burning hatred, fixed on her. The historian's skin began to blister and peel. It revealed raw, weeping flesh beneath. Her hair, once neatly coiffed, turned brittle and fell out in clumps. It exposed a mottled, diseased scalp. She clawed at her face. Her nails tore at her own flesh. Her body writhed as if consumed by an internal fire. Her screams were high-pitched, inhuman. A symphony of agony that resonated through the mill. A sound that would haunt Elias for the rest of his days. Elias watched, horrified. Her eyes, once sharp and intelligent, melted into a viscous, yellow liquid. Her body collapsed into a steaming, putrid heap. A monument to Elara's wrath. The others, paralyzed by terror, could only watch as Elara systematically exacted her revenge. One man, a descendant of the judge who had dismissed Elara's case, found his limbs twisting and breaking. His body folded in on itself like a broken doll. His screams were choked by his own collapsing throat. A woman, whose family had profited from Elara's stolen land, began to vomit copious amounts of black, viscous fluid. Her internal organs liquefied and expelled themselves in a torrent of putrid gore. The mill became a charnel house. A canvas for Elara's righteous fury. Each death was a horrifying echo of her own suffering. A brutal symphony of vengeance. Elias, miraculously untouched, stood amidst the carnage. His mind reeled. He had come seeking truth. But he had found something far more terrifying. A justice born of unimaginable pain. A vengeance that transcended the boundaries of life and death. He raised his camera. His hands were steady despite the trembling in his soul. He would document this. He would ensure that Elara's story, the true story, would be told. Not just to the town, but to the world. This was not just a ghost story. It was a testament to the enduring power of injustice and the horrifying consequences of silence. The flashes of his camera illuminated the grotesque tableau. Each click was a hammer blow against the wall of denial that had protected Willow Creek for so long. He was no longer a skeptic, but a horrified witness, forever bound to the echoes of Elara's rage. a rage that had finally found its voice. The stories are never truly over. They just wait for the next listener. Until then, be careful what you seek. Subscribe for more.